Christmas has always been my favorite holiday. The smell of cinnamon cookies baking in the oven, the soft glow of lights on the tree, the sound of laughter filling every room. I spent months planning the perfect dinner for my family, dreaming of warmth and togetherness. But that night, sitting at our beautifully decorated table, my father looked me in the eyes and said words that shattered everything I believed about love and family. Sometimes the most painful gifts come wrapped in betrayal, and sometimes those gifts set you free. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if stories about resilience and finding your strength touch your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community. Now let me take you back to that Christmas Eve when everything seemed perfect. My name is Lila, and I am 28 years old. I grew up in a small town in Ohio in a house that once felt like home. My mother passed away from cancer when I was just 12 years old. She was the kindest woman I ever knew, with gentle hands that would brush my hair and a voice that made everything feel safe. Before she died, she held my hand and made me promise to take care of my father. I was just a child, but I gave her my word. 2 years after my mother's death, my father Gerald remarried. His new wife Patricia came with her own daughter Brooke, who was 8 years old at the time. I remember trying so hard to welcome them into our lives. I baked cookies for Brooke, helped Patricia organize the kitchen, and did everything a 14-year-old could do to make our blended family work. But from the very beginning, I felt Patricia's coldness toward me. She would smile at Brooke with such warmth, then turn to me with eyes that held no affection at all. As the years passed, the divide in our household grew deeper. Patricia treated Brooke like a princess while I became invisible. My father, once my protector and best friend, slowly drifted under Patricia's influence. He stopped asking about my day. He forgot my achievements. He became a stranger living in the same house. After graduating from college with a degree in accounting, I landed a good job at a respected firm in our town. I could have moved away. I had offers from companies in bigger cities with better salaries and more opportunities. But I remembered my promise to my mother. I stayed to take care of my father. What nobody knew was the financial reality of our household. My father had retired early due to chronic back problems, and his pension was barely enough to cover groceries. Patricia worked part-time at a flower shop, bringing in maybe a few $100s each month. And Brooke, fresh out of college at 22, refused to work. She claimed she was searching for her passion, whatever that meant. So the burden of keeping our family afloat fell entirely on my shoulders. Every month, I paid the mortgage of $1,800. I covered the electricity, water, gas, and internet bills, which added up to about $400. I paid for the family health insurance plan, $800 every single month. When the roof leaked, I paid for repairs. When Patricia's car broke down, I covered the mechanic's bill. In total, I was contributing nearly $3,000 every month to a household that treated me like I did not exist. I drove a 10-year-old Honda while Brooke got a brand new SUV for her 21st birthday. I wore clothes from discount stores while Brooke's closet overflowed with designer labels. I never complained. I told myself that family takes care of family. I convinced myself that my sacrifices would eventually be recognized and appreciated. One evening, about 6 months before that fateful Christmas, I overheard a conversation that should have been my wake-up call. I was coming home from work early and heard Patricia talking to Brooke in the kitchen. Patricia said something that still echoes in my mind. She told Brooke that I only stayed because I had nowhere else to go, that I was lucky they let me live there at all. Brooke laughed and agreed. I stood in the hallway, frozen, my heart breaking into pieces. But instead of confronting them, I swallowed my pain and pretended I had heard nothing. I was so desperate for family that I accepted crumbs of affection and called it love. As December arrived, I poured my heart into planning the perfect Christmas celebration. I spent an entire week transforming our house into a winter wonderland. I hung garlands on every doorway, placed candles in every window, and decorated the tree with ornaments my mother had collected over the years. I wanted everything to be magical. I carefully selected gifts for everyone. For my father, I bought a beautiful watch he had admired in a store window months ago. It cost me $400, but seeing him happy would be worth every penny. For Patricia, I chose an elegant pearl necklace, hoping it might soften her heart toward me. For Brooke, I purchased a designer handbag she had been posting about on social media for weeks. I spent over $2,000 on gifts alone, using up nearly all my savings. But I believed that this Christmas would be different. I believed that my love and generosity would finally bring our family together. I spent 3 days preparing the Christmas dinner. I made roasted turkey with all the traditional sides, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, homemade rolls, and 3 different pies for dessert. The house smelled heavenly, and I felt proud of everything I had accomplished. On Christmas Eve afternoon, Patricia informed me that we would have additional guests for dinner. Brooke's boyfriend Derek and his parents would be joining us. This was the first I had heard of it. I had to rush to the store to buy more food, rearrange the seating, and prepare extra portions of everything. Not a single person offered to help or thanked me for accommodating the last-minute change. Derek's family was wealthy. His father owned a chain of car dealerships, and his mother wore diamonds that probably cost more than my annual salary. I understood immediately why Patricia was so eager to impress them. Brooke had found her meal ticket, and Patricia wanted to secure the relationship. When everyone gathered around the table that evening, the atmosphere felt different than I had imagined. Patricia dominated the conversation, boasting about Brooke's accomplishments, her beauty, her bright future. She talked about how Brooke had graduated with honors, conveniently forgetting to mention that I had paid for her tuition. She praised Brooke's sophistication and charm while I sat silently invisible as always. Derek's mother turned to me at one point and asked politely what I did for a living. Before I could answer, Brooke jumped in with a dismissive tone. She said I was just an accountant, nothing special. Then she changed the subject back to herself. I felt the familiar sting of humiliation, but kept my composure. I smiled and continued serving food, clearing plates, making sure everyone's glass was full. After the meal, we all moved to the living room to sit around the Christmas tree. The lights twinkled beautifully, and for a moment I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe this was when things would change. Maybe my father would thank me for the wonderful dinner. Maybe Patricia would acknowledge my hard work. Instead, my father stood up and cleared his throat. He said he had an important announcement to make. Everyone fell silent, and I leaned forward with anticipation, wondering if perhaps he was going to say something kind about me for once. What came out of his mouth destroyed me. Gerald looked directly at me and said that I had been a burden to this family for too long. He announced that Patricia and he had decided that I could not live with them anymore. He told me I needed to move out by the end of January. The room went completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I looked at Patricia, who was nodding with a satisfied expression. I looked at Brooke, who had a smirk on her face. Derek's parents shifted uncomfortably, clearly embarrassed to witness such a scene. I managed to find my voice and asked my father what he was talking about. I reminded him that this was my home too. But he shook his head firmly and said the house belonged to Patricia and him. He said I was an adult now and it was time I learned to live on my own. He called me a burden, as if the 4 years I had spent keeping this family financially stable meant nothing at all. I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to cry in front of them. I excused myself quietly and walked upstairs to my room, my legs shaking with every step. Behind me, I heard Patricia cheerfully suggesting they open presents now, as if nothing had happened. I locked my bedroom door and collapsed onto my bed, sobbing into my pillow to muffle the sound. The pain was unlike anything I had ever experienced. This was not just rejection. This was betrayal from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. My own father had called me a burden in front of strangers on Christmas Eve. Throughout that long, dark night, memories flooded my mind. I remembered all the sacrifices I had made. I thought about the job promotion I had turned down 3 years ago, because it would have required me to relocate to Chicago. I remembered the relationship I had ended because my boyfriend wanted to move to California, and I could not leave my father. I thought about all the vacations I never took, the experiences I denied myself, the life I put on hold because I believed my family needed me. I thought about my mother and the promise I had made to her. I had kept that promise for 16 years. I had devoted my entire adult life to honoring her dying wish, and this was my reward, being called a burden and thrown away like garbage. Around 2 a.m, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Megan, my best friend from college. She had sent a simple Christmas greeting, a few warm words wishing me joy and peace. Something about her message broke through my despair. I found myself typing out a brief summary of what had happened. Within minutes, my phone was ringing. Megan's voice was filled with concern and then outrage as I told her the full story. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said something that changed everything. She told me that I had been giving everything to people who did not appreciate me. She said it was time I started living for myself. Those words hit me like lightning. For the first time in years, I saw my situation clearly. I had been so busy being the dutiful daughter, the responsible provider, the invisible caretaker, that I had lost myself completely. I had allowed my family to use me while they gave nothing in return. Megan told me about a job opening at her company in Denver. They needed a senior accountant, and the salary was nearly double what I was currently making. She said I could stay with her until I found my own place. For the first time in that horrible night, I felt a spark of hope. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness and began to calculate. Over the past 4 years, I had contributed over $140,000 to this household. I had paid for everything while receiving nothing but contempt in return. I pulled out my laptop and gathered all the financial records, the bank statements showing automatic payments, the receipts for repairs and insurance and utilities. Every single bill was in my name. Every payment had come from my account. The truth became painfully clear. I was not the burden. I was the foundation that kept this family standing. And they had no idea what was about to happen when that foundation walked away. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I made plans. When the sun rose on December 26th, I felt different. The grief and shock had transformed into something stronger. I was calm, focused, and absolutely certain about what I needed to do. My first call was to Megan. I told her I would take the job and asked if her offer to stay with her was still open. She was thrilled and promised to send me the application details immediately. My second call was to my bank. I instructed them to cancel all automatic payments associated with the house, the mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, everything. The representative confirmed that the changes would take effect immediately. I spent the morning packing my belongings. It did not take long. Despite living in this house for most of my life, I had accumulated very little. My clothes fit into 2 suitcases. My personal documents and photographs filled 1 box. My mother's jewelry, the only thing of hers I had kept, went into my purse. Everything else in this house belonged to memories I no longer wanted to carry. Around noon, I heard movement downstairs. The family was finally awake, probably enjoying a leisurely breakfast after their triumphant Christmas Eve performance. I took a deep breath, picked up my folder of financial documents, and walked down the stairs. They were all sitting at the kitchen table eating the leftover food I had prepared. Patricia was laughing at something Brooke had said. My father was reading the newspaper. None of them looked up when I entered, as if my presence was too insignificant to acknowledge. I cleared my throat and announced that I was leaving today, not in January. I said I wanted them all to know something important before I went. That got their attention. Patricia looked up with an annoyed expression. Brooke rolled her eyes. My father lowered his newspaper with a frown. I placed the folder on the table and began explaining. For the past 4 years, I had been paying the mortgage, the utilities, the health insurance, everything. I told them I had kept meticulous records of every single payment. and starting today, they were completely on their own. Patricia's face went pale. She stammered and asked what I meant. I told her exactly what I meant. The mortgage payment was due on January 1st. $1,800. Could they afford it? The electricity bill would arrive next week. Then the gas bill, then the insurance premium. My father finally seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. He started to speak, his voice suddenly gentle, asking if we could talk about this. But I cut him off. I told him there was nothing to discuss. He had made his choice the night before, and now I was making mine. Brooke's face twisted with anger. She accused me of being vindictive and cruel. She said I could not just abandon them like this. I almost laughed at the irony. I reminded her calmly that abandoning me was exactly what they had asked me to do just 12 hours ago. I was simply honoring their request a little ahead of schedule. Patricia tried a different approach. She softened her voice and said they had not meant what they said, that it was just a misunderstanding. I looked at her steadily and asked if calling me a burden in front of strangers on Christmas Eve was a misunderstanding. I asked if years of treating me like I was invisible was a misunderstanding. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I picked up my suitcases and walked toward the front door. My father followed me, his voice increasingly desperate. He called my name over and over, apologizing, begging me to stay. He said he did not realize how much I had been contributing. He promised things would be different. I paused at the door and turned to face him one last time. I told him that for 16 years I had kept my promise to my mother. I had taken care of him the best way I knew how. But I could not keep sacrificing myself for people who saw me as nothing more than a burden. I told him I forgave him, but I could not stay. Then I walked out into the cold December morning and did not look back. The drive to Denver took 17 hours. I stopped only for gas and coffee, eager to put as much distance as possible between myself and my old life. When I finally arrived at Megan's apartment, she was waiting with open arms and a warm meal. I cried on her shoulder for hours, releasing years of suppressed pain and disappointment. The first few weeks were difficult. I had moments of doubt and guilt. I worried about my father's health. I wondered if I had been too harsh. But Megan helped me see that taking care of myself was not selfish. It was necessary. She reminded me that I could not pour from an empty cup, and mine had been empty for far too long. I started my new job in January, and it felt like being reborn. My colleagues treated me with respect. My work was valued and appreciated. For the first time in my career, I received praise and recognition for my contributions. Within 3 months, I was given additional responsibilities and a raise. My boss said I was one of the most dedicated employees she had ever seen. I rented a cozy studio apartment downtown with large windows that let in beautiful morning light. I decorated it exactly the way I wanted, with colors and furniture that brought me joy. I bought myself flowers every week, something I had never done before. I joined a hiking group and discovered a love for the mountains. I made new friends who liked me for who I was, not for what I could give them. About 4 months after I left, I received news from an old neighbor. My father's family had fallen into serious financial trouble. They could not keep up with the mortgage payments and had been forced to sell the house. Patricia's part-time job could not cover their expenses. Brooke had finally been forced to find employment for the first time in her life, working as a receptionist at a dental office. My father called me several times after that. His messages were apologetic, sometimes tearful. He said he finally understood everything I had done for the family. He admitted that Patricia had been whispering in his ear for years, turning him against me. He begged for my forgiveness and asked if we could rebuild our relationship. I listened to his messages, and I did forgive him. Carrying anger and resentment would only poison my new life. But forgiveness did not mean returning to the way things were. I called him back once, and we had a long, honest conversation. I told him I loved him, but I needed to keep my distance for my own well-being. I told him I hoped he would find happiness, but I could not be responsible for his life anymore. He cried, and I cried too. But when I hung up the phone, I felt at peace. That following Christmas, exactly 1 year after the worst night of my life, I hosted my own holiday dinner in my little apartment. Megan came along with several friends from work and my hiking group. We laughed and shared stories and ate too much food. Nobody called me a burden. Nobody made me feel invisible. I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. As I stood on my balcony later that night, watching snowflakes drift down over the city lights, I realized something profound. That terrible Christmas dinner had been a gift in disguise. It had forced me to wake up and see the truth about my situation. It had pushed me to finally choose myself after years of self-neglect. I learned that family is not just about blood. It is about mutual respect, appreciation, and love that flows in both directions. I learned that being kind does not mean allowing others to take advantage of you. And I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who cannot see your worth. If you are watching this and you feel like a burden to the people who should love you most, please hear me. You are not the problem. You deserve to be valued and appreciated. You deserve relationships that lift you up instead of tearing you down. It is never too late to choose yourself and build the life you deserve. I would love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever had to walk away from family to find your peace? What would you have done in my situation? Please share your experiences in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear this message today. And if you have not already, please subscribe to this channel so we can continue sharing stories of strength and resilience together. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Whatever challenges you are facing, I hope you find the courage to put yourself first. You are worthy of love, respect, and happiness. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next story.